Stories of life told by photographers.
Parts of the UK this week are flooded. We've had so much rainfall in the last week. This past, I've got wet feet already. I've got wet feet. I thought my boots were more waterproof. Well, they are to a certain depth, I suppose. The River of Life. Oh, Neil, I like how you linked that. You'll understand why that's part of the title today. It's very celebratory, that part of the title. A real juxtaposed title in one sentence, really, if you think about the two halves of it. Day trips to hell, and then the River of Life. My word, look at this. The path I was on last week was overgrown. This is too. Wow. I think this is definitely going to be my opening shot, my sketchbook image. But anyway, it's a show that celebrates travel today, and the pictures we bring back to show and teach people about our journeys in history, which sounds very grand, but I think that's what we do as photographers and picture makers, isn't it? We're curating, which is my new favourite word, moments in our frames that show our state of mind and our fascination for this wonderful but pretty confusing world at times. In June, actually, I'm on my travels with this podcast again. I'm going to be Snowdonia bound, a mountain range in Wales. And I may even be sleeping out under the stars. Me, you, and a camera. Steady on, Neil. I've not signed up for this. I shall be resting my head in comfort. You can sleep with the goats on the side of a mountain. I'm being joined, actually, by somebody who teaches survival in the wild, Andy Fisher. I hope he has a spare bivvy bag, because I don't have anything like that. Not at the moment, anyway. I'm bivvy bagless. So today, then, yes, travel. And a slight diversion to embrace music photography on the road. So it's still you're shoehorning, Neil. I can feel you. No, it's still travel. You're on the road photographing musicians. So yeah, title wise, it was going to be Have Camera Will Travel, but I did think that the title we've settled upon, Day Trips to Hell and the River of Life, may grab attention quite well. Anyway, I'll talk more about it in a moment. Let me just make a picture, make one of my sketchbooks of, what's becoming a theme of these walks at the moment, the places I'm choosing. Oh, that's nice. There's some... Oh, is that because the lens is dirty? I've got some sort of strange mist coming up through the picture, as if the sun is striking the front elements of the lens, but there's not that much sun around. I could just have a dirty lens. Here we go. 1/2/5. I'm at ISO 400. F8. I'm all manual this week. I'm on my X Pro 1. Let's make a picture.
The Photowalk is brought to you by mpb.com. Quality used photo and video kit. Buy, sell, trade, create at mpb.com.
I feel like I should return with a strimmer. Oh, nettles again. Oh, I definitely need to invest in some slightly sturdier, although summer coming, I don't really want to have really thick trousers, walking pants. But yeah, I should bring a strimmer. Vroom, vroom, along this bit. Oh, and now look, how are we going to get through this? Puddle. Does this stop? Are we in the jungle? Our eldest, Jack, is going on a school trip to Berlin. Yes, Berlin, very soon. I was looking down his itinerary yesterday, and it looks amazing. Not that I'm being green-eyed and restless with my travels, as opposed to wide-eyed and legless. 3 points if you can tell me the artist on that one. Look, a music quiz at the same time. Oh, God, look at these. Nettles upon nettles. Neil, I feel this is becoming a regular start to your show. I think it is. I seem to be choosing paths that, thank heavens, Barney went out with me on Wednesday. Thank heavens he's not on this one. He'd be lost in all this. He really would. Right, let's get through this bit and I can carry on. Yeah, okay. But yes, he's going to Berlin. Historically, he's doing so much more with his school trips than we ever did. Jack gets to see the graffitied ruins of the Berlin Wall. He takes a trip on the Spree. He goes to Parliament. He tours the Olympic Stadium. And then, as you would imagine, because it's very important on a field trip like this, he'll learn about the darker times of the Holocaust. They go on, I think it's various trips and conversations to study that part of history. Then there's a spy museum or something like that from the Cold War years. Did I mention Parliament? Yeah, I think I did mention Parliament. But school trips have certainly changed, haven't they? I mean, in my day, we took a rickety old bus off to Cuffley Camp, just a couple of miles down the road, where we were paired off with kids we didn't know. I don't think they were even from the same school, some of them. We didn't know them, didn't like them. And then we'd spend 5 days trying to light a solitary fire to roast a few marshmallows, which never really worked because it rained solid for 120 hours. And then, just as an addendum, all my stash of sweets was stolen by Lawrence Riley. Funny how you remember names, isn't it? Who says he didn't do it. But I know he did because Joanna Cheeseman, who I had a bit of a soft spot for, told me he did. And I'm sure she'd still swear blind today in a class of 78 reunion. So, so Jack goes to Berlin and he'll be able to make the best memories, best travel memories. Or, well, get this, and I almost spat out my evening Garibaldi when I learned this, they're not allowed to take their phones. Now, you tell me, how many young teenagers take pictures with an actual camera these days? Of course, I'd love to see cameras out there with more teenagers. I really would, but the reality is, they make their pictures, they make their memories, they tell their stories. They gather their stories of life as they grow up on their mobile phones, on their smartphones, but they're not permitted to take them. And I've tried to talk him into taking a real camera, but he just says, "No, Dad, you're the photographer in the family, I just want to use my phone." So that's it. No, I don't suppose he'll really mark this incredible journey that he's about to make. Now, what would have been clever now is to dovetail this monologue into a topic about smartphone photography. That would be good, wouldn't it? But no, that's not what we're doing. But it is a show today about taking your cameras on similar adventures, making travel projects, recording the incredible places you visit, including Cuffley Camp, because I looked it up and it's changed a bit in the last decades. There are, I believe, 2 passports we use on our travels, I think, as picture makers, as photographers. One, the small booklet thing that you present at the border to somebody who'd be really very good in a Don't You Dare Smile competition. And 2, just as important, I believe, the camera. Smartphones included here. The camera is without a doubt a passport in itself, isn't it? We've often said that. It's a passport of and to curiosity. It focuses our intentions and what we see in our observations. I really do think it does when we travel. It takes us from simply observing to absolutely, a deeper sense of absorption. Looking through the eyepiece at and into a new place and recording how you felt when you experienced it, either by yourself or with friends. That's what today's show is all about. Photo travel stories from 3 photographers today and a 4th, whom I shall come to in a mo, about music. It's very much, though, today, light and shade, as you're about to find out.
Today on the Photowalk.
Former guest and photojournalist Marissa Roth talks about 2 precious trips she made with a camera. Not going with a plan, but with an open heart and open mind.
Once we started going into some of the, monasteries, I don't know, it's very hard hard to describe it. It was like everything was familiar to me.
Extra miler Duncan Ferguson is finding mountains in Nepal.
We took about 10 days to actually walk into the base of the mountain.
Right.
And you're doing like 5-8 hour days of just solid walking uphill.
And our good friend, former army photographer Giles Penfound, will, I genuinely believe this, entirely change your thoughts about seeing. Now, I've known Giles a long time now, and we talk about him often. I know that, and I've learned things about his photographic process and the ways he sees that I've never talked with him about before. We learn about a photo project he made visiting concentration camps in Europe. It's a photo story that changed his entire working life in a project called Day Trips to Hell.
And people go, it's just a brick wall. I say, yes, that's not just a brick wall. That's the crematorium, back of the crematoria at Sachsenhausen.
Stories of life told by photographers. And today we're joined as you and I walk by Giles Penfound, Marissa Roth, Duncan Ferguson and music photographer Nathan Rhines in a show that's written by you from the letters, the thoughts and the pictures that you've shared with me. Everyone is a photographer on this walk. We say that every week, and we really mean it, whatever camera you use, and that includes the smartphone, because this is a show about how taking and making photos has you feel, what it does for us and others around us. And we'll be inspired as we walk by words from other picture makers and adventurers with a camera. In the mailbag and also on the show today, it's finally here, the itinerary for our African adventure in January 2024. If you're coming with us, we're going to have an amazing time traveling. But even if you're not coming along, you kind of will be, because I'm making 2 weeks worth of programs from Africa with you and with those I photograph and travel with. More on that one later. Today, letters about the power of music in storytelling and how making pictures entirely changed one writer's life story. Embracing the life that is photography. Also, it's week 2 of the assignment, so a timely reminder to get your pictures in later on. And if you're a Eurovision fan, I think we might have the inside nudge on who is going to win. But Neil, how do you know? Have you actually invented your photographic time travel machine? Maybe. Nearly 7 billion people on this planet are able to make a photograph with something and record life. So we're not walking alone, documenting our place and time in this world. Checklist out. Coffee and Garibaldi's. Packed and check, Neil. Walking boots. Check. I'm going to go machete for the long grass. That sounds a little bit... I'm not sure about that, Neil. You'll get arrested. All right. Strimmer. Check. Let's start the walk. I'm making my sketchbook images today, but I'm not sure you'll need to see many. We've got so much on the show page today for this episode. So much for you to see from photographers I talk to. I mean, when you speak to 4 photographers, there's going to be a bit in the reference library. Atop that, we've got other bits and bobs, of course, in terms of letters into the show, and some films to go and sample and experience today as well. But up here, there's a beautiful splash of bluebells here. Bluebells, they're never quite the same when you make photographs of them. The carpet you see with your eyes is not necessarily the carpet that you record with your phone. With your phone, Neil, with your camera, your X Pro 1. Sorry, I was still thinking about Jack. It is daft, isn't it, not being able to take your phone on what I would suggest is one of the most pivotal school trips. I mean, he's made several already, but this is a really important one. I assume it's something to do with something that's happened in the past, some sort of safeguarding issue, perhaps. But I'll not get lost in that. Let me try and get a picture of... Yeah, I'm not sure this carpet's... I'm not sure it's going to look like a carpet. I'll do my best. I'll do my best for you. Focusing manually. That's annoying. One of the things on the X Pro 1 is the Q button is roughly where you rest your thumb. And if you're trying to use the camera with one hand in particular, you keep pressing the Q button, so it keeps going into a menu. Stop doing that. I just want to see the picture. 125th. Here we go. ISO 400 f5.6. We'll see. We'll see. I've still got that. It must be the lens. It doesn't look dirty. I've got like a soft focusing effect on it. That soft portrait, the Hollywood portrait look. I quite like it actually. I might. Shall I? I could clean the lens within an inch of its life, or I might just leave it and see what we come up with. They are sketchbook images after all. Right, because this is a podcast that is in a literal sense written by you to a great degree, I've several parts of the website photowalk.show that have some, what I call loosely conversation starters. Questions that give you a reason to write in and let me know where you are in the world. There's the roll of 12, which you'll find under the photo features tab. 12 questions about making pictures. A sort of homage to the actual physical roll of 12 exposures. But instead of the exposures, we've replaced them with questions. And then on the contact page, there's a handful, half a dozen or so, of other questions, just to give you some confidence to put pen to electronic paper, as it were. So let's start this week with a light reference to travel from Mark Bajent, who answers the question from the contact page, how has making photographs changed your life? Which is quite that's quite an imposing statement to suggest that it might have done. But there are people for whom making pictures, being a photographer, professional or hobbyist, or any other title you want to give it, has made an absolute difference to their life and the way they operate. So simply, Neil, says Mark, it did completely change the course of my life. Photography allowed me to escape my concrete jungle estate in Basildon. School was preparing me for a worker bee role in Ford's or the local cigarette factory until I visited an RAF recruiting centre. And it was here that I was offered a position as a photographer. And knowing nothing about photography, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? You went to a recruiting centre for the Royal Air Force and they said, here we go, how do you fancy being a photographer? We've got a bit of an adventure for you. Wow. I tell you what, had I gone to that recruiting centre, I'd have been fighting you off, figuratively of course, fighting you off for that particular job. My recruitment lessons, our careers master, had me pegged down as an accountant. That was it. I didn't follow his advice. But yeah, training at the Joint Services School of Photography was a revelation to me. Offered a position as a photographer, knowing nothing about photography, didn't stop me signing up for 9 years. I found something I could do very well. It gave me a huge boost of confidence, and it taught me that I wasn't as thick as my school teachers had told me. I assume, Mark, or I hope there's an air of flippancy there, or artistic license, because the very thought of somebody who's supposed to develop and build young minds, suggesting that your colloquial phrase here, I suppose, thick, is beyond unfathomable to me. Although I'm not as naive, and in fact, actually, something comes to mind. No, it's not beyond unfathomable, because that sort of thing happened to me. As I'm going to replay my memory of the 11 plus exams. 11 plus, Neil, what's the 11 plus exams? Well, it was a test. Now, I need to try and get this right because not everybody takes this test. You take the test if you're going on to a traditional style of grammar school or public school, or what's the difference between private school and public school? Because public school and private, I've never really understood that. They're both the same thing, aren't they? Neil, you clearly didn't go to one of those. Yes, you're right. But you look, it's a sort of school that they where they call jackets blazers, and everybody addresses each other by surnames. And my school was on the cusp of becoming rock and roll comprehensive. and coming out of its very stalwart grammar history that it had. And I was in the year intake where it changed from being traditional and historical in some eyes to ruffian and comprehensive. So they made us, we didn't have to take the exam, but they made us take the 11 plus, a kind of, this is what you should have done example on us, I suppose. I mean, I was selected to join the school because it was still going through some form of selection process, but I didn't have to take the 11 plus. But it so happens that, well, I think I failed it, as did a great majority of the kids around me that hot afternoon we took that test. I mean, still to this day, we might not have failed it, but we were made to believe we failed it because, well, they sent in this extraordinary dinosaur into the class. We were treated to this sort of chest-puffing dressing down by one of the established, I've been there 100 years masters, who clearly couldn't get over the fact that history was dumbing down his school with all these comprehensive level kids. You lot are lucky to be here. That was the sort of speech we had, because you've all failed. You're all useless. So Mark, just now when you mentioned your experience, and there was me saying, well, I hope it's not like that. Well, snap. Slightly different experience, similar kind of result. Sorry, Mark, often a blather diversion there. But my training, says Mark, was 4 months as a darkroom technician working with massive air cameras. What's an air camera? Oh, that sounds very glamorous. I'm imagining you're in the air with a camera. That seems to make sense, doesn't it? And using 5x4 and medium format, I went to some amazing places. I'm sure you did. Later, as a freelance photographer, I met my wife during a shoot for Southend Airport. And as a freelancer, I travelled all over the UK, shooting a wide range of industrial and lifestyle stuff. Fantastic and exciting life, and it was all because of photography. In 2015, I closed my business due to a replumbed heart and a coma, my word, which took the wind right out of my wings. But at last I'm picking up my camera again, and I'm doing my own version of Photowalks. I'd say the path of my life is almost entirely due to photography. You did ask, Neil, and I tried to keep it short. All the best, Mark. Mark, you talk for as long as you like. I blathered, probably for the length of your letter, so I apologise. But this, Mark, is wonderful. And I'm very thankful for you sending in your thoughts about why photography is important to you and what difference it's made to your life. And you sent me a Flickr link, which I'm going to put on the show page today, so others can come and see you starting your new photographic life, as it were, I suppose, isn't it? But I tell you what, Mark, I'm going to challenge you. I would love to know some of the photographic stories that you hint at there. Maybe something you did, some sort of, I don't know, sortie or mission, or you must have those. I tell you what, you'd be fascinating to spend a dinner with. There must be a big story, Mark. I'm sure there are many, but I'm challenging you to send one in, and the pictures, if you're able to, of course, because you might not be able to. But thanks, Mark, for your letter. I do like photographs or scenes where they're vignetted, not necessarily by adding a vignette of darkness around the frame of your image, but naturally vignetted by perhaps trees, or there's something naturally circling around your frame. And in this case, I've got some fantastic, I hope they're not coming this way, dark foreboding clouds with branches overhanging where I'm walking here, and I've got the grass and the quite extreme growth of plants at the bottom of the frame. And then I've got this barbed wire, just this old rickety fence running straight through the middle of my picture. Let me make a sketchbook so that you can see what I'm talking about as we get buzzed by the helicopter. Can you hear it in the background? Now, I'm going to have to F11 because it's a bit brighter here. Change to 500th of a second. ISO 400, and there we go. Another one. Let that helicopter go past. Thank you for the feedback you're leaving on the website show page. I read, or the pages, I read every single one. Thank you for them. And it's nice sometimes to use them within the show as well. Michael Mixon, thank you for your feedback to last week's episode, 379. It's particularly appropriate, seeing that we were clearly reading each other's minds, in that Duncan, who you left your comment about from his letter, is on the show this week in person. So from Michael, I loved hearing about Duncan Ferguson's trip to Nepal and seeing his photographs. That definitely took me back to when I was in Nepal in the late 90s. Such a remarkable place. In fact, that is where I would want to go with the teleporter from question 12 in your roll of 12, especially since you've allowed us now to travel in time. Yeah, there is another time travel question in there, isn't there? So I've kind of got two time travel questions now. Might have to do a remix. Anyway, as Michael says, I'd choose to go back to one of two specific moments from my trek in Nepal. In both instances, I recall just being completely awestruck by the scale and absolute quiet of my surroundings. One was in the afternoon as we were hiking from one village to the next over a mountain pass that afforded breathtaking views of the peaks and valleys that lay all around us. And the other was in the evening at the highest camp we stayed at on Annapurna, when a few of us scrambled up a nearby hill to get a better look at the majesty of the spot we'd spent the better part of a week getting to. There's no train route, there's no metro system. It's hard work, as you're about to find out in a moment's time, actually. But you're right about the silence of these places. I referenced back to a few weeks ago my time spent in Austria in the extra mile, where I was absolutely taken by the sincere quiet, despite being or facing these extraordinary, huge mountains. It's a real sort of, it was two stories in one image, if that makes sense. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean about the absolute quiet of your surroundings. I did have a camera with me, says Michael, but for reasons that escape me, I either never took any photos during those times, perhaps not thinking I could do the scenes justice, or I've lost them in the intervening years. In either case, I'd love to go back to that time and attempt to capture what my memory has logged as one of the best times of my life. Being able to relive one of those hours would be glorious in itself. Thank you, Duncan, he says, for being my proxy teleporter. I think possibly he was. Listen, there's a trip, Michael, you and I, Nepal. What do you think? I'm there, Neil. I win my lotto next week. Good, we'll need it. Thank you, Michael, for your words. It's a very good question, that number 12 on the roll, 12 of 12. Where would you teleport to get magical pictures? I was thinking about it myself, and I've noted down a couple. There's so many. I mean, I suppose I could trot off some show-busy ones from my days in radio, but no, I don't think I would. I don't think that's where I would teleport back to. I'm going to take a week. A week, Neil, my rules. A week, or I'm taking my football back. Yes, I'm going to teleport for a week. And if I could, with my photo teleporter, I'd probably go back to an age when I was, I don't know, 7, 8, 9. I'd photograph everything that is sort of sliding out of my memory to some extent. I'd photograph the local shops. I tell you what, everything in my bedroom, everything around the house, the old fridge, the old gas hob all that stuff, it's all got so much value to me. Grandma's house. We mentioned this on the Fujicast with my reprobate buddy Mullins. The secret, not so secret sherry store in Grandma's house. Dad's shed, the tools in Dad's shed, they're precious. Some of them were actually his dad's and possibly his dad's dad's. I've got some of those tools now. I never use them because I don't want to break them, but they are really, really precious. But I'd love to have photographed them in situ, even better with Dad using them. So yeah, that's what I would do with my teleporter. I'd make ordinary pictures that become, well, since we mentioned Lotto, the ordinary pictures that become the Lotto win pictures of tomorrow, the really valuable stuff. So Michael, thank you for your message, your feedback to that show, and it seems a good time to speak with the first of our 3 travel guests today, he says, segueing neatly, because that's the theme of today's programme, travel, not time travel, but travel. So let's make it one of our extra milers, Duncan Ferguson. Since you mentioned Nepal, let's get a story about it from Duncan. This is, I suppose a small serving, an amuse-bouche of his adventure with a camera in Nepal.
Duncan, Nepal. Now I know it was a place on your list, both for the climbing and the photography. But tell me about this trip you made with your wife. What you were there to do and see, and from the photographs I've seen already, my word, what a landscape!
Incredible place. I'm just looking at the photos on the screen now. I mean, the reason kind of why we went there is because we've both wanted to do something epic. That's bigger than we've ever done before. I've always wanted to do some sort of like long distance hike. My wife, she's done quite a lot of mountaineering before as well. So she's done like Tubacel, and so she's always wanted to do Island Peak. Now, Island Peak, it's 6,189 metres high. So it's pretty high.
Yeah.
You're kind of not in the kind of you're in the area where you'll struggle with oxygen, but not in the so-called death zone, which is what you get above 8,000 meters.
Yeah, although we're still at half the cruising height of a commercial airliner.
I mean, it is high, and you notice that as soon as you get into the area. So you fly into this tiny little airstrip on the side of the mountain. And then from there, you're just walking uphill, basically.
Is this the mountain? Is this the airstrip where you land going uphill, as it were?
Yes.
So you're landing into the mountain?
Yes. And if you get it wrong, so if you overshoot, you go into the mountain. If you undershoot, you go into the mountain. So, there's been a few weird crashes and stuff there before.
Well, I think they leave the wreckage of aircraft on the side, don't they, or something?
And they just brush it off the end. And when you take off from it, obviously you're taking off downhill.
Yeah, it's just a long shoot, isn't it? And hopefully you'll lift at the end.
Well, in a normal aircraft, you take off from the land, but it was a weird experience looking out the window on this one because the land just leaves the aircraft. It's the other way around almost. It's a very odd feeling.
So you land at this place. I think the first thing, we had a brief chat before I pressed the big red button, as I call it. You said immediately you knew you were not in a land that you've been in before.
Yeah.
Culturally, that is.
It's a very different culture shock. So from that airport, everything is carried either by donkey, yak or person. So you'll have like teams of Sherpas waiting at the airport, and then they'll kind of carry your bags or whatever for the duration of your stay. If you've got like different items, so say you live up there and you need to get, I don't know, say like boxes of beer or eggs or yak meat or whatever you need, it's all then carried up, and it's all carried on your head.
Right.
With that a kind of like basket off your forehead.
Right.
So I saw a bloke with like, I think he had about 10 chairs with him, garden plastic chairs.
Not on his head.
Just on his head. And then there was a bloke who I didn't get a photo of. I did get a photo of the plastic chairs, but there was a bloke carrying like lumps of iron that were used for building or something.
Extraordinary. So you leave the airport, you're on foot, and it's not flat lands, this. I mean, immediately you're... it's a challenge, I would imagine, of a walk.
Yeah, I mean, the way we walked, you walk towards Everest Base Camp along a trail. I mean, it's well tended to, the trail, but it's still a hard-going trail, and it goes up, down, everywhere, and all the way up the Khumbu Valley, and it will cross the Khumbu quite a lot, and you'll get all these like rickety metal bridges, but then you share this trail with donkeys and yaks as well.
So this is the river that winds its way through that region.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the bridges that you're talking about, I'm thinking of these clinker bridges, rope tied at the edges, or maybe it's steel rope now. I don't know. Steel.
Yeah, they're like steel suspension bridges.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm thinking a bit too. I'm thinking a bit too Indiana Jones, probably.
No, you're all. Funny enough, you're along the right lines.
Oh, okay. My word. So you're bound for Island Peak, which is part of the Himalayas Park. Tell me what sort of landscape you're walking through. What you see, where you are.
You've got the Lhotse face along the left-hand side, and you've got a few others kind of dotted around. And then Everest kind of looms over the top of Lhotse, so you can kind of see it from where we were. I mean, along the way, you've got tea houses, which you stay in. Okay. So tea houses are, if you just think of like one room that's been relatively done up with a log burner in the middle, and then you kind of eat, drink, socialise in there. Nothing's heated. Running water is only available during the sunshine hours because all the pipes freeze and all that kind of stuff. The toilets are very, very basic, just like holes in the ground kind of thing. Yeah. But then when you get up to the base camp of Island Peak, it's just a tent village with, I think I've shared with you the toilet before.
Yes, I've got the toilet picture, which I've used on my Weird and Wonderful Instagram feed, all about bathrooms of the world. That's another story in itself. But the tents I saw in your glorious photograph you sent me of, I assume that was the tents that you're talking about, which really provides a scale to this place, this majesty of this place.
The tents are, I mean, certainly where base camp is, behind it you've just got mountain, and then off to one side of that you've got this ginormous lake, which I think holds something along the lines of 3 trillion tons of water, which is all meltwater from all the various mountains around.
Wow.
I think there was a study done in like the late 90s saying that if that lake overflowed or broke, then it would just flood the entire valley all the way down. But yeah, just the scale of it, even just as you're walking up the valley, the scale of the place is unreal.
Now, for a trip like this, and I know it was a place you both wanted to go to. It was definitely an on the list thing. Did you go because it was a photographic project or journey as well?
Not specifically for photos. It was more for the adventure that we went.
Yeah.
But naturally, I'll take my camera with me as well. I've got a fairly modest camera. I've got a Canon M50, I think it is.
Right.
Took a couple of lenses, one of which I broke pretty much on day one.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I just shot everything on the kit lens.
So what were you left with? What was that focal length?
It is an 18 to 150 mil.
So you had a fair range in that.
So, I mean, it's not like a mega camera, but what I did was, because it's such a vast place, if you've only got like a prime lens, say like a 50 mil, you just stitch a lot of photos together. The majority of my photos are stitched panoramics.
No way. Okay.
Just to get the scale of it in.
Yeah,
I'm just looking through all my lists, and most of them are stitched panos.
Stitched. And for those that are saying right now, Neil, Duncan, stitched. What do you mean stitched?
It's fairly easy these days. You just chuck it all into Photoshop or your preferred photo software and ask it to stitch it together. And usually through AI and all the good software that we've got now, it does a fairly good job.
Yeah. So acclimatization is something I hear mooted a lot when people talk about this kind of terrain and adventure. And I want to post on the show page today a film made by landscape YouTuber Thomas Heaton, who made a film about leaving Everest's base camp due to altitude sickness, and he describes very well what that feeling is like and what it means. I mean, you can't just get out a plane and go straight up a mountain, can you? Even if you could get there quickly. How long did it take to make your journey to where you needed to be and arrive there, well, fit and healthy?
we took about 10 days to actually walk into the base of the mountain.
Right.
And you're doing like 5-8 hour days of just solid walking uphill.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of guides with us as well. Just I think the Nepalese government now are asking everyone to have guides. You didn't have to when we went, but they're brilliant people and so useful to have because they kind of show you all the local fauna and stuff. But yeah, 10 days walking in, big long days, and you're doing up to 15 miles in the day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which in that terrain is quite challenging. Yeah. And then with the lack of oxygen as well, even like unpacking your bag at the end of the day, it's just like, I'm out of breath.
Yeah.
What's going on?
What does that lack of oxygen, I mean, you said you're out of breath, what's going on at the end of the day, but what does that lack of oxygen do mentally to you?
You're just drained at the end of it now. And you do get fuzzy in the head. So if you don't keep your water topped up and acclimatise properly, you can do yourself a bit of mischief. So,
did you take a tripod? Were you tripoding your shots as you went?
No.
All
you know
handheld?
What, the best thing I had.
What?
So you know those like camera clips you've got.
The Peak Design ones.
Yeah, the Peak Designs one. That's by far the best bit of equipment I had with me because it just meant that the camera was always on my shoulder, and then if you needed it, you could just whip it out and take a good set of handheld shots.
An adventure like this, a trip like this, a photo journey like this, what do you think you learned about yourself?
I mean, yeah, like it's a challenge just to be outdoors and just to challenge yourself, really. It's again like the scale of the place, and then having to deal with the discomfort of not having like your own home comforts like a flushing toilet. It was just getting over that challenge, really, and doing the walk.
And what are you going to do with the photographs? What's the plan for them now? Because you have a good project's worth of pictures now.
I do. I've been reading a lot about self-publishing books, and obviously I think over the last few episodes on the Photowalk, there's been a lot of talk about self-publishing books. So I've certainly got enough to fill it. So I'll do something in print.
And so for the future, more mountaineering, more alpine climbing adventures?
I struggled this time with the altitude. So I struggled with altitude sickness quite a bit. Yeah. My wife was fine on this occasion. However, she's struggled before. So I think we want to go and do something else, certainly in the Khumbu Valley. So we're probably looking at a mountain called Amadablam, which it looks ridiculously hard because the last section of it is like a sheer wall of ice.
Oh. I have got just a logistics one about kit. I get the idea you took one camera, which I would always find a bit of a risk. I'd be thinking, I've got to have two bodies at least. But yeah, one body, I get that. Two lenses, one of which broke.
Yep.
Fortunately, one stayed with you for the duration, which is good. Batteries. You are not necessarily able to find easily a 3 or even 2 pin point in which to plug a recharger. What do you do in that respect? I mean, you would have to take a bag full, wouldn't you?
Oddly, my camera did very well with batteries. I've got 3 batteries for that camera, and I only needed to charge one once.
Wow.
Again, because I've just got the camera up here, it was a very quick kind of, right, take a few shots, turn it off, whack it back on. And even though it was like really cold, they lasted really well.
Fantastic adventure. Back to the airport, you took off, ground fell beneath you. I bet you slept all the way home, didn't you?
No, it was, where did we stop off on the way home? It was Abu Dhabi on the way home. So yeah, quick stop off there. Why do they always put armrests in like airport lounges when they know people are needing to lie down? I never understand that. So, we slept on the floor in the airport for a little bit and then got on the plane home. Yeah.
And we end with one of life's big questions.
Duncan Ferguson in Nepal, and my thanks to him for talking with me. And actually, his pictures will be on the show page, yes, as you would expect. And actually, for our extra milers, that was the actually I wanted to get to, you have the privilege of him sharing pictures from his trip in the next Zoom show at the start of June. There are summit pictures and more to lead on from this story today. A Zoom show, Neil. Sorry, don't interrupt me. Yes, a Zoom show. A Zoom show. yes, we have a Zoom show. If I mention it twice now, it's for our patrons, for our extra milers. It's the first Tuesday in the month. It's our Zoom show where we share pictures, we share stories, we do a bit of Roll of 12, and now for a few months now, we've been having guest speakers who are our extra milers. They won't necessarily always have to be. I've got some plans for other speakers. Say no more. Special surprises to come. But it's a special chat this coming June from Duncan, who's going to share more about that pictorially, about that experience. Really, really looking forward to that. Also for our extra milers, which you can join via the website photowalk.show, Wednesday's Extra Mile Show.
On this week's Extra Mile.
When I think of vultures, I think of two frames, first of all. I think of that picture of my grandmother at the end, which is, I think, one of the most powerful, personally at least. And I also think of the one of the vulture lurking over the child.
Is the famous one by Kevin Carter, The Vulture and the Girl. There's actually a modern version of that now. It's The Falling Man from 9/11. But it's also, I mean, the myth surrounding it versus the reality. It's not like he walked away. He chased it away.
You can become an extra miler by clicking on the support the show icon. It's on the front of the website, just there. Yellow, orangey button. And thank you to all those that are helping to make this show a weekly adventure with our cameras.
For quality used and inspected photo and video kit with a 6-month guarantee upon what you buy, visit mpb.com.
Our guests on the Extra Mile this week then, Arsh Jabari from Singapore and Rob, aka Photo Ferret, from West UK land. Now, next week, actually, we have an American extra miler and a musician, Leon Droby. One of the things that I talk about with Leon is the old chestnut. Would that be the length of the show, Neil? You read my mind. Yes, it's one we go back over and over and over and over, like one of those records where you get stuck. Do you know, I tell you what, kids these days, it's a kids these days moment. They'll never appreciate what it was like when a record would start skipping. It would go back and go back and go back and go back. Do you remember those days? It was, I tell you what, I'm getting more Essex by the moment. More Hertfordshire stroke Essex. My original stamping ground by the moment. But as a DJ, that's just brought back some memories. You'd think, right, I'm going to put a long 12-inch song on, and this is my opportunity to nip off to the loo and come back, and you'd be in the loo and you'd hear that the record got stuck, and it would be going back and going back and going back and going back. That's the fastest run back to the DJ decks ever. But we were talking about length of show. Leon, I have a feeling this one will be a longie today. I don't know that because I've not mixed it together as I'm talking with you now, but I've got just a feeling 4 guests and letters and stuff about Africa to come as well. It might be a longie. You might have to chop it in 2, this one today. Perhaps we should have an intermission where we play 70s lift music and you get a chance to press the pause button. Now, talking of pause, this is a sort of travel story and sort of not. I might be accused, quite rightly, of shoehorning slightly, though the idea of Europe in Eurovision and a life making pictures of concerts on the road, well, that really is travel, isn't it? That's travelling with a camera, and very glamorous travelling with a camera to boot. Now, originally, I'd planned for this week to sort of pay homage to a massive music event taking place this weekend. If you're listening to this on the day of release, assuming that you're not in Australia land, New Zealand land, where you might be listening hours ahead. Oh, I get so confused. It's the Eurovision Song Contest tomorrow. Now, I know my other listener is not necessarily a fan, and if you are saying a Euro Whatavision, Neil, let me fill in the gaps for you. The Eurovision Song Contest, in French, because the marking, the scores are done en français, Concours Eurovision de la Chanson, sometimes abbreviated to ESC, or known simply as Eurovision. It's this international song competition organised by the European Broadcasting Union, EBU, and it features entries from lots of European countries. As you would imagine, it being Eurovision, does what it says on the tin. Each participating country submits an original song to be performed on live telly and radio. And you get competing countries casting votes for other countries' songs, and eventually they find a winner. And it gets a bit, well, look, countries that like each other vote for each other. And I know that sounds cynical, but really, let's be honest, if you've watched Eurovision, you're going to be, well, broadly nodding along with me here. So it start 12 points, I think it goes 12, 10, 8, is it 6? Goes down to 3, 2, 1, and then the famous nil point. And so you vote for your neighbours, usually. That seems to be the way that, it used to work. It's been a little bit different of late. And the winner of and Australia land somehow are also part of this, despite you not being in Europe. But you're very, very welcome. The winner of the contest becomes the host country for the next year. Now, last year, Ukraine won, which did present a bit of a problem, not musically, because I think we can all agree it was, and even though the UK had a spectacular song that was leading and then became second, once the TV viewer vote came in, I think we can all agree that it was a moment we celebrated together. It was a real one in the eye for you-know-who, wasn't it? But the song was also good, he says, quickly. So for obvious reasons, and because there's a madman on the loose in the country starting with R, they felt that it probably wasn't safe that Ukraine would be hosting it this year. So they've given it to the second place country, that being the UK, and actually Liverpool, which is a home of musical heritage, isn't it? Now, I thought you might like to hear, since we're talking about adventures with a camera, from a photographer who travels the world photographing these music events. He has Eurovision experience, and at the end of the show, so you're gonna have to wait for this, I think, and it may be that we have some insider knowledge here, nudge nudge, wink wink, that he will be picking the likely winner of this year's show. Anyway, it's a short chat, but it was good to catch up with a Eurovision photographer. This is our new friend from the Netherlands land, Nathan Rhines.
Nathan, what I love about your story is that it's a happy accident. You didn't set out to become a music photographer. Music photography found you.
Yeah, it all started during my study. I was studying human information design and strategy.
Right.
And it's a complex name, but it all comes down to marketing and communications.
Oh, I was thinking, my God, that sounds like a science. It sounds like people with foreheads much longer than mine would understand.
Yeah, if I want to impress people, I always use that name.
I would.
During that study, I had a semester where I had like 4 or 5 photography classes, and I learned the basics, shooting manually, making compositions, that kind of stuff, but at a very basic level. And I've always been interested in photography, but that was the moment I could pick it up again. And during some internships later, during my study, I had the chance to photograph the first shows, and that was the 1975 in Amsterdam, and Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, also in Amsterdam.
It looks to me, Nathan, like you have the dream job. I mean, travel, rock and roll, behind the scenes to see what's really going on. I mean, this has to be a very glamorous, living the dream kind of job, unless you're about to say, no, Neil, it's much tougher than that.
Well, mostly it's lots of waiting. Yeah, we arrive at 2 in the afternoon, and then it's a bit of sound checking, and then it's just waiting till showtime, and then it's 2 hours fun, and then after that it's time for some editing and process all the images I've taken.
But you do take a lot of pictures behind the scenes, though. So during those waiting times, you seem to be photographing the setup, lights going up, sound desks being organised. So you're not sitting on your hands, are you?
No. I like to capture what's going on behind the scenes. There are lots of people and lots of crew involved to make a production happen.
There are a few rules to concert photography. One of the rules is that you can only photograph the first 3 numbers at a gig. And I've never understood why that is.
Me neither. No, I can, if I'm fair and I put my marketing communication hat on and I look through that perspective, I can imagine an artist doesn't want to give away the whole show yet. For example, yesterday evening, I've shot Sam Smith in the Ziggo Dome, and that was a typical 3 songs, no flash show.
Yeah.
But after the show he gave in the Ziggo Dome, he will perform in another venue, in another city or another country. Yeah, and you want to keep an element of surprise for the visitors who's going to that show.
And how strict are they? I mean, would they come in and sort of pick you up and frog march you out if you misbehave?
Yeah, it's pretty strict, yeah. You enter the venue with security, and after 3 songs you leave it with security.
With security.
So it's not that you're always allowed to watch the show till the end. After 30 minutes, I'm outside again and I can go home.
Eurovision is this weekend. I didn't realise, by the way, that Eurovision, now I've written this down, the Eurovision has double the audience, perhaps it was more actually, than that of the Super Bowl. It's a massive event. What are your feelings about Eurovision? Are you a fan of it, or was it just another gig for you?
Well, to be completely honest, I was not a diehard fan from the first days of Eurovision. But when Duncan Lawrence won the Eurovision and the Netherlands had to organize it, yeah, that was one of the things I thought I want to capture that event because it's what you said. It's one of the most enormous events in the whole world. It has over 200 million viewers.
It's huge.
From over all the world. Yeah. So I had one goal, and that was capturing that event.
How much access did you have? Because this isn't like one act where you get 3 songs. This is act after act after act.
I was allowed to capture everything I wanted.
Right.
So had access to the stage, to the green room, to the whole venue itself. So basically I could go wherever I wanted.
And what is the audience like? What's the sound like in this place?
Well, this year there's a whole standing floor again during Eurovision. And in my time in Rotterdam, we still had COVID.
Of course.
So it was only seated on the first tier. So that affects the
atmosphere.
The atmosphere a bit. Yeah. But they're really enthusiastic. It's really fun and a lovely public to have during the show.
What are the big pictures you made during that night where you thought, oh, Nathan, I've nailed this?
Well, I was really happy with one of the shots I made completely after the grand final. Most of the audience was leaving the venue, and one of the camera operators invited me from wait a bit and join me when I walk on stage. So I waited and I walked with him. There were some little interviews with Måneskin, who just won. Yeah. So I buzzed around that a bit and shot some images of that. But when those interviews were done, they had their sort of first moment of realization that they won the Eurovision Song Contest. So the 3 of them fell on their knees, started crying. Wow. They started calling home with their parents. And I was there only with their cameraman and myself. So that was a super unique moment. Yeah. When you had that human emotion in it. Yeah, so those were some images I'm really proud of because nobody else has them. And it was just a lucky timing of being in the right time on the right place.
I'm collecting all sorts of insects on this week's Photowalk. Bugs that I didn't even know existed. That's what happens when you start walking amongst triffids. Triffids, Neil, you said that last week. I think you have an over-enthusiastic imagination. Probably I do. My thanks to Nathan Rhines. And that picture he talked about will be on the show page with a link to where you can see and buy a coffee table book of the Rotterdam final, which features Nathan's pictures. And there's a couple that I put on the show page to show you that. Perhaps it's for Eurovision fans, a collector's item. So, yes, my thanks to Nathan. And as I said, at the end of the show today, he will be revealing, pressure on Nathan, the winner, the possible winner, Neil. I said, no, I'm just going to say the winner for this year's Eurovision. Right, assignment. Then I'm going to cross back to my studio self for Africa 24 news. We're into the second week of the month now, so as far as the assignment is concerned, which was set last week, this is when pictures hopefully start to roll in. The photo assignment, which is on the website now, photowalk.show, look under the photo features tab. May's assignment is all about making a portrait, but then interviewing the person that you photograph. Now, don't start getting all concerned that you have to do a long interview. It could be a conversation, a chatette that you have with them where you note down a few details, possibly record it on your phone, and then later on go back and write it up. But we want to get that experience of getting to know the person in the photograph. So I suppose this is it definitely is. It's a confidence exercise as well, because it's difficult, isn't it, sometimes to claim that confidence, to make a photograph and then say, oh, by the way, could I just have a couple of minutes of your time to... But I tell you what, people, I think, are genuinely flattered. Not everybody, yes, sure, but a lot of people, I might even venture to say most people, are really flattered to be asked about their life, for somebody to show interest in them. Now, Steve Reeves, who set the assignment, he spends a lot of time talking to the older generation, for good reason. There's many stories to tell, and I know he adores that side of his portraiture. I was making a walk with Sabak a lot yesterday. I did not have my camera. I did have my phone, so I could have done it with my phone. But I met this really interesting chap on a bike. Eric was his name. And he cycles from London, and he works part-time as so I'm doing this from memory now, so I could have written this up. He works part-time as a driving instructor, that's right. No, not a driving instructor, nonsense. Part-time as a cycling instructor, cycling proficiency instructor. So going around schools and teaching kids how to cycle safely. And the highway code, we still have a highway code, don't we? Has that been replaced by something else? Neil, you should know that. You're a driver. Yes, I should. Shh, don't tell anybody. So that's what he does. And when he can, he takes his bike, he takes it on a train out of London, and then he gets on cycle paths, or where I met him, on a towpath next to a canal, and he cycles with his tent, with food rations, with water, with etc. And he just cycles as far as he can in the time that he thinks he's got before he needs to turn around and toddle off back towards London. He was making his way out to the West Country to visit a place called Wookey Hole, which is, I was going to say a labyrinth, but it's not really a labyrinth. There's a word I'll probably use in a moment, actually, for something I'm describing in Africa. No, it's caves. Wookey Hole is a cave structure near Brizzle and Western Supermud. And that's what he does. So there we go. I've got my interview. I remembered all that. But the only thing I didn't do was I didn't take a picture of him. And I should have. At the time, though, he was giving Barney a fuss, and I was quite interested in his bike. I could have taken lots of pictures of the bike. There we go. I had a photo story. Oh, Neil, you missed an opportunity. But that is the assignment. Good luck with it. I'm really looking forward to what you're going to do for this one. I really am. Those stories of people, I find them fascinating. Right, travel. That's what we're talking about this week. And at last, it's taken a month or two longer than it should have done and than I planned for. But the Africa 24 expedition itinerary is at last out. We are traveling to Africa, to West Africa, to the Gambia in 2024, at the end of January, toward the end of January, start of Feb. Let me whet your appetite with just a little of what we're going to be doing and seeing, and you could be there with us.
The Gambia is rich in culture and history and natural beauty. Situated on the west coast of Africa, the smallest country of the continent, it reaches inland following the course of the 700-mile River Gambia, bordered on either side by Senegal. Home to 9 historically important tribes, all of whom live harmoniously together. The country's blessed with much wildlife: aardvarks, hyena, Nile crocodiles, warthogs, bush pigs, hippopotami, or is that hippopotami? Monitor lizards, chameleons, geckos, green vervet and red colobus monkeys. Bottle-nosed dolphins are often spotted at the entrance to the River Gambia from the Atlantic Ocean. The country is also celebrated for its breadth of bird life, with over 500 species to be discovered in the forests and along the River Gambia's mangrove-lined banks. The first expedition into West Africa for the Photowalk is an opportunity to learn and practice and experience photography from 3 guides and is open for 8 to 10 explorers. There'll be photo talks and walks led by our guide, the photojournalist Jason Florio, known for his story making in Africa and around the world. I'm simply at this point going to bullet point, I think, because the website page will expand and tell you more. We'll be visiting Banjul's Albert Market, an emporium that's wonderfully pungent, lively, and bustling with a labyrinth of alleys. There's that word. We travel by traditional fishing pirogue bound for the town of Barra, northern Gambia. We'll take a trip not to forget on the Barra to Banjul ferry. You'll see and hear all of life on a 40-minute crossing used by 20,000 people a day. We visit a local school to observe and experience, though importantly, we'll also be making photographs that the school will be able to use to show a record of day-to-day educational work. We'll have an opportunity to sample some Gambian traditional dishes, such as benachin and super kanja. We'll talk about our stories and enjoy Kora entertainment. We privately join a local football team for their training, photographically, that is, early morning, before visiting the fishing town of Bakau and then Kachakali, one of the 3 sacred crocodile pools used as sites for fertility rituals. We'll pick up one of the Gambia's familiar famous double-deck river boats, our transport between destinations. Kunta Kinte Island, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We'll photograph and learn about the dark history there of the West African slave trade. We visit Brefe Bolon, a tidal creek and local village, spending time with and photographing local people of the area. We'll see Makasutu, a tropical 1,000-acre reserve encompassing 5 different ecosystems, including a gallery forest, savanna, mangroves, palm forest and wetland. We witness the Kankurang, where masked dancers exorcise evil spirits, and these are some of the highlights. If you hear today's show and think, I'll have myself a piece of that, please, Neil, then go to the website today and fill in the form. Spaces are very limited, he says, sounding a bit like an advert, I know, but really trying to be a conduit for travel and adventure, which is what today's show is all about.
I'm really in 2 minds what camera or cameras I'm going to take with me to the Gambia. I absolutely know I'm going to take my X100V with my different lens adapter sizes, focal lengths on them. So I know I'm going to be taking that. I'm tempted to take my X Pro 1 that I'm using here today, because I love the really silky nature of the pictures that come direct out, even in JPEG form, out of this X Pro 1. It's a bit like when I first used, I was a Nikon shooter for a good few years right at the start. I still have an F5 film camera, and I had the D1, was it D100, 100D, D100, D2X, D2F, and then I swapped to Canon. I had a Canon 5D it was, put in my hand at a workshop I attended by, it was an Australian photographer called Jerry Guionis, and I went on his course to learn how to be a better wedding photographer. Actually, the style that he taught and the style that I have today are entirely different. However, I picked up a 5D. He put his 5D in my hands and said, "There we go. Spend an hour or two," he said, "with that. You will want to change your camera system the moment you get home." And I said, "No, I won't." And and he was right, because yes, I did. The original Canon 5D had this beautiful milky sort of colours, didn't it? If anybody that's used the 5Ds, and I've had the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It had this, it was a colour, it was a feeling all of its own, wasn't it? My original 5D, I gave it away to somebody who's retouched pictures for me for a long time now. And I've often commented, "Can I have it back?" Or I've hinted, but she's never taken the hint. But that 5D, I loved it. I really did love it. So yeah, the X Pro 1 maybe. I don't know. I know I want to travel light, that's for sure. And I know I might need a longer focal range for some parts of that trip. Oh, I don't know. I need a caddy, that's what I need. Somebody with a golf bag to carry all the kit. There we go. Can you come with me? Can I pack you as my caddy? That would be handy. Right, stop blathering, Neil. This episode is long enough. Here is a letter from Alan Sorensen, which I think is the perfect introduction for my next guest today, Giles Penfound, the photographic author behind part of the title to today's programme. So from Alan, hello Neil. First I want to thank you for another wonderful and moving episode. Wednesdays and Fridays are quickly becoming my favourite days of the week. Oh, you flatterer, you. Flattery will get you everywhere. Oh, shucks. I'm going to go and hide behind an imaginary sofa along this path. But no, thank you sincerely. You're very kind. I teach music at Drury University and wanted to respond to your latest episode and comment on the power that music can have over us, or have on us, actually, he said. Music has always been used for good and evil to move people, especially when combined with external elements such as ideas and places and images. As you experienced Zadok the Priest, yes, I played Zadok the Priest I found a version I was able to play, is a great example of Handel's brilliant sense of theatre. Oh, so moving. And for those that did watch the coronation, I know it wasn't of everybody's taste and interest, but for those who did watch it, Zadok the Priest, again, just a glorious example of how potent that piece of music is. As you know, he was famous for opera, says Alan, in his day, which of course is a great example of combining art forms to create something greater than the sum of its parts. We experience that today in cinema, where music combined with powerful images and stories creates an art form that moves us in ways too deep for words. Another example, often used in films, is the powerful Adagio for strings by the American composer Samuel Barber. He also set it for choir using the Agnus Dei text. The climatic moment set to the word pacem, or peace, is one that never fails to bring me to tears. Now, Adagio has been used in many movies. I looked it up. I thought it was used in The Deer Hunter, but it wasn't, was it? No. But it was used in Platoon, I know that, and it's been used in so many programs, so many films. It is, it's just a evocative, isn't it, piece of music. Your reference to Schindler's List, says Alan, reminded me of a choir tour I organised in 2005 to Germany and Austria, where we had the honour of singing at Dachau and what remains of Gunskirchen Lager, a subcamp of Mauthausen that my father helped to liberate in 1945. Goodness. We sang a setting of an anonymous text that was found on a basement wall in Cologne by somebody who was in hiding. And it was this: I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in love, even when feeling it not. I believe in God, even when God is silent. Having the opportunity to visit this sacred place and share the experience with my students forever changed us. It made the Holocaust real, and I hope gave them insight into what can happen if we let it. I've enclosed photographs from that trip that I still revisit every year on the anniversary of the camp's liberation on May the 4th. And I'll include these pictures from Alan on the show page today, along with the pictures that are referenced within my recording with my good friend, photographer Giles Penfound. Alan, thank you for this. Thank you for your pictures and the links that you've sent, which I will pop on the show page today, of course. Such beautiful yet haunting compositions. So to Giles. Now, I am proud to call Giles my dear friend, and I hope in a genuine way now that by his conversations that we've shared here that you feel that you have a connection with him too. And this is a chat I recorded right at the start of the week with him. It's about a project, a photo story that he made following his visits to concentration camps. Now, for many, this is a pilgrimage, if not religious, perhaps a contemplative or reflective one. People go to these hideous places, these horrifying places, for a myriad of important reasons. Now, I know these pictures he made in and for this project. I've seen them many, many times, or so I thought, because this is a conversation about a travel project to a place and places that are historically vital to remember. And the way we remember them is personal and certainly unique, as you're about to find out, because I didn't know these pictures that he'd made as well as I thought. And this is just the start of us talking about his project, because we both agreed after we'd spoken to a film that we're going to make together called Day Trips to Hell. This is Giles Penfound. I always thought the title Day Trips to Hell was absolutely inspired, and I wonder whether initially, because I know we're about to talk about your this particular trip that you made photographically, but was it going to be a series, Day Trips to Hell? Because it sounds like it should have been.
A series?
Yeah. Well, different places, different day trips to different hellish places on Earth.
No. It was about... Well, it came from just the first visit, which was to Bergen-Belsen, and which was for another project. I just got that idea, that feeling at the time, that's what we're doing. We're taking day trips to go and see these places. Well, I was taking a day trip, and physically, metaphorically, whatever way you look at it, and that's exactly what it was like. And then after spending just a very short time there, I realised that there was more to this, and the more research I started to do about this kind of time in history, realised that there's so many of these places that were there, but it really wasn't about what they were, because I don't have the emotional connection or any sort of connection to what I assumed they were. My initial connection was how they were now, or how they are now, rather, hence taking a day trip. It wasn't about me trying to tell people the story of what other people were doing. This is a story about me. This is a story about my engagement with these places. So it's purely, I don't want to say autobiographical, because that sounds very pompous, but in a way it is. It certainly became, in terms of some of the images I made because of it, and they went on to have enormous consequences in terms of how I would shoot in the future. But this is about me. This is about my reaction to what this place was. Not only the physical places, but the ideas behind it. This insane concept of how far, political ideas, nationalism goes, bigotry, racism, homophobia, or putting whatever you want. That it was all about that for me from the get-go. From walking through the gates of Belsen, where I remember hearing all these kind of stories about, birds not flying over Belsen and all that. It's absolute hogwash. It's nonsense. They do, because there are birds there. I saw them, and at Auschwitz I photographed birds there. But it was in colour, and it didn't seem to be right for it to be in colour. So my reaction to it was completely, well, I've got to remove this from it. I've got to remove the colour from it. How can I tell the story about what I think this place is about when it's separated by, 50 years, 60 years then, 70 years now? How do I tell that story? Well, then I can't tell their story, so I have to tell my reaction to these places, and my emotional story.
Well, this is an image. I always think I've seen all the images of one of your projects, because we've pored over your projects on many occasions, but every time I revisit one of your projects, I seem to find a picture that I haven't seen before. And this particular one is it's an upside down image. It shows the ubiquitous isn't this part of the station, that tower over the station at Auschwitz, isn't it?
It's the death gate.
The death gate. But within the composition, there's a sign that says parking, which makes this into a tourist destination picture.
This is kind of one of those pictures when it is about the meaning and how was I able to get over my feelings and the feelings I was having at this time. This is a car park. It's a car park just outside the front gate. So this is on a crossroads, and it's a fairly busy crossroads as well. And I remember sitting in the car and it was actually chucking it down rain. And in fact, the car is mine. A fantastic little Corsa. And so I was looking at the puddles, and this whole story is about metaphor and simile. So puddles became an idea of a portal. But if you flip it and reverse it, it's like you're looking from underneath the puddle.
Yes.
So for me, this is about looking from hell. So when you see it, you're looking from hell into another hell. So you're looking from the idea of the typical sort of, Western civilization, Christian idea about where hell is. It's underground. Well, actually, no, it isn't. It's right. It's right here. But then right in the middle of it, you've got a parking sign. And actually the other sign, which you can't see, is actually, it says Auschwitzim, which is the Polish word for the town, which the Germans called Auschwitz. Right. So it's about metaphor and simile and meaning, but that's what I wanted to see. But how do I sort of portray this? How can I bring this out? And everything about it is there, and even the lines on the road.
There's a picture in here, and we're going to do this entirely out of sync. There's a particular room with... here we go. You found the image straight away. It's almost like you knew I was going to mention this one. So these are all the shoes. These are all the things, aren't they, that were taken? And I remember you saying to me that... so this is quite a well-known display in Auschwitz, isn't it? Yeah. It's in a very stark room, and there's a young lady looking out the window. And I remember you saying to me, and it might have been a reflection on how you were feeling as you looked around Auschwitz, that you were quite angered by her.
Yeah, I was. And it's turned out to be probably, this is probably one of the most important pictures I've taken. Because it taught me so much. Well, I was able to learn so much from it. So this is in Block 11, which is at Auschwitz Camp 1, and was one of the main barrack blocks where all the people were kept. And one can just imagine the horrific nature of what happened in these places. But the display is a display of all the shoes and paraphernalia that is left over. And as I was walking around, you just get very solemn, and it's not a happy place at all. And I saw this young lady. In fact, I've just had a look at the negs today. She's actually walking around with her boyfriend. And I was absolutely outraged by the way she was dressed. And if you look at the picture, you can quite clearly see her knickers through this kind of very sheer sort of dress. She's got a low-cut top on, and I just stood there, and thank goodness. I don't know what changed me. It's nothing mystical or anything like that, but I realised, who am I? Who am I to start objectifying this young woman? I know nothing about her. I don't know her family history. I don't know her politics or ideas or anything about it. But here I am, this bloody documentary photographer, with these grand ideas, pouring judgment on her because of the way she dresses. If there's anywhere on the planet that a woman could dress where she likes, surely it's got to be Auschwitz.
And there's great juxtaposition between, and I can see there in the reflection of the window. There's quite a lot of people in this room, but we only see her, and we only see the shoes and the paraphernalia that's on display. But you still made the picture.
No, absolutely, because I saw this and had all these thoughts going through my head, and then all these elements sort of came into it, and everything in this picture has meaning. Absolutely everything, not only meaning for what it is, but for what it can be and what it brings to me in my understanding about what happened here. And the point is where she's looking. So she's looking from this room onto Block 11. I think this must be Block 12. So the area between the two, Block 11 was a special detention camp. Within there, this is the first place that Zyklon B was used against Russian prisoners of war. This was basically a torture chamber in this block. But in the square that she's looking onto, there was an execution wall there, and everything about it. The shoes, the kind of the people reflected in the glass. It's almost, when I saw that, I just saw it's like the ghosts of these people rising up, and it's not to tell anybody, but it's to tell me, get off your high horse.
Well, many people making photographs. I know this place is visited by hundreds of thousands of people, but you're there making a photo story. I would imagine many people, through an air of solemnity, were witnessing, but not necessarily making photo stories or photographs at all.
There were a few people with video cameras, if I remember rightly. Mm-hmm. But so this was in 2000, so 23 years ago. Not one smartphone.
No, oh yeah.
No smartphones. Yeah. And it would be completely different now.
Yes.
When I went then, I spoke to a lovely lady who's one of the guides. I said, is it okay to take pictures? And they were adamant, do take pictures, because by taking pictures you tell the story. So actually, in a way, me taking pictures, there weren't that many people doing it. And I was shooting on films with my small Leicas, so it's very unobtrusive. And yes, there were a few people taking pictures, but it was more people looking around. Mm. I would imagine now it'd be something completely different.
I'm surprised by the next photograph that you've chosen. I'll let you explain the picture and why you've chosen it, though.
The great difficulty in all of this, for me, and the great challenge is how does one represent in images what happened there? But not only what happened there, but the feeling of what these places are today. And you cannot escape the absolute insane brutality. And this picture is actually taken at Bergen-Belsen, where there's very, very little of the original camp left because it was torched because of disease and all this, pretty much after it was liberated. But so how do you represent that? How do you, they have graves there that says that there are 2,000 people buried here, 3,000 people buried there. How do you get an idea of what that looks like? And then what I realized was that how do I represent those people? And in not only this picture, but in a lot of other pictures, it became about very ordinary things. Yeah. And, there's more people in the ground than there are leaves on the ground. Mm. And so it becomes... It's not a direct representation, but in a way it's for me saying, here's something incredibly ordinary. They're just leaves. They're just leaves on some stone. But is it different? Do they become different because they're at Bergen-Belsen? This place is infused with human cells. Mm. Okay, so those trees would have grown, feeding off the bodies that were in the pits. So are there bits of human cells?
Were you thinking of this metaphor and this as you were making this picture?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wow. No, absolutely.
Okay.
So you walk, I mean, in not only in this picture, but there's another picture I have of, it's of a brick wall. And when I had the exhibition for this, there was no captions on it. There was a booklet which you had to read afterwards. And people go, well, it's just a brick wall. And I say, yes, it's not just a brick wall. That's the crematorium, back of the crematoria at Sachsenhausen. Then all of a sudden, when I look at these, they're just leaves. And but then when you say, yeah, but these are leaves from an oak tree that grew in the remnants of people, da-da-da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden, for me, it made a big difference.
Wow.
And this is something that constantly happened about ordinary. I became obsessed with surfaces. Absolutely obsessed with surfaces, trying to find a surface that was original then and now, and I never found one because it's impossible. Because even a micron of surface had changed, it wasn't that same surface. So I couldn't photograph that same surface, but I could have photographed things that lead me into ideas about it.
I suppose the cliche way to tell these stories, and of course it's not just Auschwitz, I realise this now looking through this piece, it's many different camps, isn't it? It would be to photograph, and you did photograph steps going down, but the abstract nature of many of your pictures, I'm now beginning to understand. For example, there's cracks in the mud there with a boot print.
And this is, again, became very, very important to me, is what is important about these places? Does one just show, like you say, the steps or the death gate at Auschwitz? And yes, I've made those images, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Or does one make images of the barbed wire? Or yeah, absolutely, because they're fundamental to that. But then you go down this thought process of, and this is an image that was made at Buchenwald, and everything about this just absolutely sent horrors through me. Because it is just, so these are all made in the winter. But you look at this picture and it's just cracked mud. It is not a special picture. It's not an important picture at all. However, on this site stood a medical block where prisoners were experimented on. And with that knowledge, all of a sudden it changed for me. Are these just cracks? Are these cracks just physical? Are they metaphorical in terms of cracks in our moral thinking, in about how we look at each other, how we respect each other then and now, and more so even now. Even and you can go even further. The blueprint, and I included that particularly because it's not just about what it is then. It's about what this place is now, how we're interacting with these things now, and not saying, "Oh, that was then. That was back in the past." This has such relevance today.
How different did you feel at the end of your project to the start? Because you clearly went in thinking, right, I assume you had some kind of thought on how and what you were going to make pictorially, but at the end you came out with a very different set of pictures, and we're ending actually on the most extraordinary picture, which is of the gulls sitting on these hideous concrete posts that would once have had electrified fences running through them.
My intention from the second I conceived of the project was it to be serious. And to not be easy. I mean, this is a 2.5 year project, and in many ways, it's still not finished. If I was to be honest with you, it had to be serious. It had to carry weight. It had to have meaning, primarily for me, because I wasn't necessarily. At the time, I wasn't necessarily thinking about how other people reacted to the work. This had to be really, really important to me. And it's without doubt one of the most important projects I've done. And this particular picture, which is called 14 Gulls, because there are 14 gulls sitting on the former. Yeah. This is actually looking from the selection ramp across to the women's camp. And there's nothing spooky about this. These are just gulls resting, facing into wind. And there's nothing otherworldly about this. However, it is, again, it's profoundly important to me, this picture, because it changed and helped to change how I think about making images, how I think about telling stories, how I think about the most ordinary, banal, boring things. A bit of concrete and some wire are just not, when people know the story behind it. But then also recognizing that, in later years, 3 years after I made this picture, I was in Iraq, and this kind of affected me profoundly, this picture.
How did this single image, this 14 goals image, how did it affect your view of being a photographer in Iraq?
So I can remember, I haven't got a photographic memory, but I remember the moments when I make my pictures. And so I was stood on the selection ramp, just looking around, and even though the lens I took this one was taken on a 135, it actually had a crack down it, which is why there's some chromatic aberrations in it. And I looked at this, and it was just extraordinary. It just meant something to me. And I remember, and I thought, I'm stood on the selection ramp at Auschwitz, at Birkenau, where people they got off the transports and they were selected to die immediately, right, or go to the left and die through slavery and the most obscene treatment. When I was in Iraq, just prior to the battle for Basra, there were people fleeing Basra, just ordinary people fleeing Basra from our invasion, and these people must have been terrified. And all I saw was soldiers I was working with separating families from each other. Okay, and I actually made the picture I made there, and at that moment I didn't have the courage, and I'm ashamed of it. I didn't have the courage to stand up and just say this is wrong. This is fundamentally wrong. Because when I took the picture at Auschwitz, I said, as a soldier, how would I react? As a father, how would I react? Oh, it's never going to happen. But be careful what you say, because we weren't carrying out a Holocaust, but we were foreign invaders in a foreign land, and these people were terrified of us. And from that moment on, I made pictures to show just how brutally we were treating these people.
And my sincere thanks to Giles Penfound. I like to bring back our friends. I really do. Or rather, I hope that you feel it's a sort of a community of friends whenever I bring somebody back to have further discussion with them. And, we were having a further discussion actually over dinner, myself and Giles, and we talked about his project. And as I say, we hatched this plan to make a film about his visit and the importance of the way that you see within this film called Day Trips to Hell. And he suggested, and it's very, very generous of him to say this, and believe me, he doesn't blow smoke metaphorically, you finish the rest. He commented or suggested, one of the two, that he feels that this podcast has become, well, a sort of camera club, but a camera club that doesn't make people who don't know what an f-stop is feel uncomfortable. He said it's the sort of camera club he'd like to belong to, which I thought was very sweet of him. We also had a chat about guests on the programme, and I was kind of with him dancing around this idea, certainly not dancing around the kitchen, but dancing around with an idea, although he's a very good mover, about something on the programme called The Portrait. I've been thinking for a while of making a show called The Portrait. Don't you dare go stealing this now. But I thought, no, I haven't really got time in my life to be doing another podcast. So I just thought, well, maybe I could bring The Portrait into this programme, into this walk. Because a portrait doesn't always have to be photographic. A portrait can be a written piece. It can be an audible piece. And the idea of bringing people in to talk to us who aren't necessarily photographers as a portrait. And we kind of start next week, because on Monday I'm going to be talking to Kevin Kelly, who's written a book called Excellent Advice for Living, Wisdom I Wish I'd Known Earlier. What a great title. I've got some reading to do over the weekend, I can tell you, because I need to sort a shorter list of examples from 450 bits of advice he gave on his 68th birthday. It was a gift to his young adult children, but it turned out to be this fascinating, illuminating book full of those sort of oh now yes, yes and yes moments, as I call them. Things like learn to learn from people you disagree with. See, that would be for me an oh yes and yes moment. And this, you'll love this, stand by. Steady yourself, prototype your life, try stuff instead of making grand plans. I literally stopped and grinned with a very broad grin upon reading that one. So I want to get the story behind the advice, the story behind the things. I mean, 450 things, that takes a bit of recall, doesn't it? Not just recall, but invention. I'm really looking forward to speaking with him. Now, you might be saying, because I'm looking at you now, if I had glasses, I'd be looking over my glasses at you. You might be saying, you've mentioned this Kevin Kelly before. I recognise this name. And I've certainly heard Sean Tucker talk about him as well. And yes, you'll be right, because Kevin travelled in the 1970s as a poor, his words now, solo photographer in the hinterlands and villages of Asia between Iran and Japan. He travelled on about $2,500 a year and came back with 36,000 slides. But he also wrote this essay that I've referenced, and I know Sean has, called 1,000 True Fans, a principle that I think is really important for creatives and photographers, and one both myself and Sean have talked about, as I say, and it bucks the trend and flies right in the face of this look at meism that I think we have in the 2020s. You know, this incessant search for millions of likes and followers. The 1,000 True Fans concept, which I really like the idea of, is an idea that he wrote it back in, or shared it at least, maybe he wrote it before, but he shared it in 2008. And this essay predicted that there might be an industry made up of entirely of creators with successful careers in this creative industry, built upon just 1,000 true fans. And if you feel squeamish about the word fans, replace it with, I don't know, followers or well, how about friends? Friends is a nice way of doing it, or saying it. So yes, Kevin Kelly next week. So there's a photographic edge to him, of course there is. But I think the story that he will share, and that wonderful collection, 450, my word, how can you even think of 450 bits of advice, is going to make for a fascinating conversation. Hold on. I don't know if I'm going to get down to car. It seems to me that this vegetation has grown within the length of this walk. Well, it is a long episode, Neil. So yes, Kevin Kelly next week. Right, I'm closing out on this week's show with another friend of the show, Marissa Roth, whose photo stories from Tibet and a particular sea crossing are stories I really do come back to over and over. And I tell you what, they could well fit into Kevin Kelly's Prototype Your Life advice, because they are stories made on the river of life. What is it that John Lennon said? He said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And I think that can extend to photographic stuff and life too. You plan to tell a story one way, or maybe you don't even plan to tell a story, you just happen to have your camera with you. But then life happens, and you and your camera make something even better. I think that's what this conversation, this final conversation today, is all about. Look, it's probably best described by Marissa Roth as she shares a story she's touched on before with us, but it always changes slightly. There's always new bits to learn. So 2 stories, the chance of deciding at dinner one day that, do you know what, I don't fancy a standard 50th birthday. I think I want to go to Tibet. And also making a voyage across the Atlantic Ocean.
We've had an increasing number of letters of late about travel, and so when it came to talking about travel on this show, I wanted to revisit 2 projects in particular that came to mind from photographers, guests, friends that I've spoken to in the last few years. And 2 of those projects are from your archive, Marissa, your story about Tibet, which we'll start with in a moment, and this beautifully simple, what I shall call, story of ocean texture. It's you on a boat and the sea. And lots of it.
A ship, actually.
A ship. Yeah. I made this very same mistake a couple of weeks ago when talking to a fisherman who'd been trawling on these huge things that go out to Iceland, and I called him an angler. And he took one look at me. He looked like he was going to throw me overboard. So on a ship, not a boat, a large ship at that. So we'll come to the crossing in a moment, but let me start by introducing this project on Tibet that you made. Your pilgrimage to a very special place. You've documented beautifully in several sets of pictures from your travels.
So actually, what's interesting about both of these, what you're calling projects, they actually didn't start off as projects. I would say they both started off as instinctual impulses. In the case of Tibet, it was a place I had always wanted to go to. And over the years, when I was doing a lot of photojournalism work in Asia and Southeast Asia and South Asia, I had done a number of stories on the Tibetan diaspora, Tibetans who were living in India primarily. But I always felt a great affinity with the Tibetans. I don't know why. I just was really drawn to them. And I was in Goa, India in March of 1989, and I bought actually the same necklace that I wear today. I bought it, 34 years ago. And I bought it from some Tibetan refugees. And the husband said, this will always bring you luck. But it's like, I don't know, it's just a part of me. And I went home, and then a few months later, my mom passed away. But Tibet just pulled me. And then when I was heading towards my 50th birthday, I was thinking, well, I just don't want to go out to dinner with my then husband. I thought, well, let's go to Tibet. What do you think? Actually, the genesis was we were at a Nepalese restaurant in LA, and I had gone to the ladies' room, and as I came out, there was a poster of Tibet, and of course Mount Everest and all the prayer flags. And I came back to the table and I said to Nigel, I want to go to Tibet for my 50th. And he's like, okay. I had no idea what I was going to see, how I would respond photographically. I knew that I didn't want to photograph in black and white, even though that is what I had been photographing with quite regularly. I knew I wanted to photograph film. So Kodachrome was still viable. I basically just decided to take 100 rolls of Kodachrome with me on the first trip, and a couple of, my old cameras. One was it was actually a wonderful little Leica, sort of almost like a Leica Happy Snap, but beautiful. And then I took one of my old Nikons. I knew enough that I didn't want to look like a photojournalist. I just wanted to sort of fly under the radar, almost like just a hobbyist, or I was there on holiday. I decided to come with an idea that I would photograph the interface between the Tibetan and the Han Chinese cultures, and that lasted for about 2 hours. I found it completely uninteresting. And then it was just completely responsive. It was like a visceral response. Also, I had some serious altitude sickness, which in a funny way, I think was very beneficial because you feel so rotten and headachy. But it's almost like this pure state. The chatter in my brain was just gone, and everything was just reactionary.
It's interesting that you said you went out there without a plan, because and part of me was thinking, well, it would be very easy to go to Tibet and think, right, particularly with a photojournalistic head-on as you have and had, think, right, I'm going to paint this with a political brush.
I mean, after that first afternoon idea, which I then chucked, then I sort of gave myself permission to just be not a tourist, but just be, and whatever I was reacting to. And once we started going into some of the, monasteries, I don't know, it's very hard to describe it. It was like everything was familiar to me. It was just like, it was like I just had to show up, and I just reacted. Of course, I had no idea what was going to come out because I was shooting film. But the whole thing was, and I was rationing my film, because I knew how many days we would be there, and, I didn't want to overshoot. But if something really caught me, then I just shoot at, just go for it. So I had no agenda. It was just purely almost what I was feeling and seeing simultaneously, because it's quite sensory. It's not just visual. I mean, it's auditory when the monks or the nuns are chanting, or there's gongs, the smells. I mean, it was almost, there were moments that almost felt transcendent and metaphysical. I don't know if that was the altitude sickness or it was truly transformative for me.
Yeah.
And then after I came back to LA and developed the film, there was one photograph. It was actually in the nunnery that almost looked like an abstract painting, even though it was a straight photograph. And so then when I went back the second trip, then I actually even sort of quote unquote gave myself permission to really leave my photojournalist hat behind. So the second trip was even looser, but because it was Kodachrome, the results were spectacular. Some of them were unpredictable, but I actually wanted that random color, whatever it was. It really was almost like an interpretation of what it feels like to be there rather than what it looks like.
One of the things that fascinates me is that from this decision during a meal out with your former husband, you thought, right, that's where I'm going. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to make a photographic project, but you knew it when you got there. You knew it enough to take 100 rolls of film with you, that's for sure. And then subsequently, through no planning at all, you've ended up actually with a project that has become an exhibition. It's currently, as we're recording this, it's currently on, and I dare say there's further plans for it in the future. And that's the wonderful thing about not necessarily having a plan.
Well, I would have to say my three biggest projects, my Women and War project, Tibet, and The Crossing, none of them were planned as projects. It's almost like, I know this might sound a bit odd, but it's almost like I'm just like on the river of life, but I'm so responsive. And certainly, I mean, as a photojournalist, I'm hyper responsive to whatever my environment is, and I work quickly. But these projects just sort of came to inhabit me, but then there was also recognition of something much deeper going on.
Which is an excellent time to talk about the Crossing. I adore this project and the pictures from it. It's in some ways it's a study of the sea, but that does it no justice, because these pictures of the ocean made crossing the Atlantic on a underlined ship, they are a story of your parents' life, in that they made this journey. It was their pilgrimage to a new life. But again, it was kind of like having a meal out must go to Tibet moments. It was very organic. Remind us how it came about.
So I was reading the New York Times Sunday travel section in January, I guess it was 2015. They were having a sale, their 175th anniversary sale, and it said transatlantic crossings. And it was like this thing jumped out and like hit me over the head. I mean, I was, that wasn't my world. No. And I literally called the 1-800 number. And the agent said, oh, yeah, our first crossing is May 10th, which happens to be my birthday. So anyway, I thought, I have to go to New York to photograph Anne Frank's cousin. That was sort of on a side burner, but I didn't want to go in the middle of winter. And then I thought I hadn't been in London in so long, it would be a great excuse. So anyway, I literally just booked the trip right then and there on the phone. And so it was that first trip. I had no idea what I was going to photograph. Again, I took 100 rolls of film for a 7-day crossing. I booked a cabin on the lowest possible level that still had like an open balcony, because I wanted to be as close to the water line as
Which you
possible.
Certainly look like you are in these photographs. Yeah.
Again, it was some impulse had pulled me. I've had enough skill and training as a photographer to know I have to have my ducks in a row. I brought a tripod. I bought, chamois to dry my camera. I brought film, batteries. I think I had 2 cameras, 4 lenses, so I was prepared. But once I show up, I just let go. And
so you didn't
react.
know. So the pictures on the crossing are from your balcony, as low down as you can go, before you end up with a cabin full of water.
Some of them were from deck 7.
Oh, okay. But okay, but they are all pictures of the sea and the various moods of each day. So did you have an idea when you sat in your cabin that first night? Thought, right, what do we? I know you said you'd experimented already photographing water, but you weren't to know that all of a sudden something on deck might be more interesting to you.
Well, I was just completely reactionary, and because it was all new to me. But again, it was like the ocean inhabited me, almost like how Tibet inhabited me. And, I was waking up, sometimes at dawn to look at the dawn light. I was constantly walking around the ship, going up. There was like a walkway above the bridge.
Right. Yeah.
So I was in constant motion, almost learning the moods of the ocean. And the first crossing was really emotional and wrenching for me because I just kept thinking of my parents. And then when I finished it, I couldn't wait to get back. And so I did another crossing the next summer. I ended up doing 7 crossings, 2 back to back. And then I also wanted to do some crossings in the same direction that my parents did, which was, east to west. So the more I was on the ship, the more I learned. And, it's constantly different. But what was fascinating was, I had moments where I was sort of elated or kind of low or soporific, whatever. But I found, the moods of the ocean were almost in sync with how I was feeling, or how I was feeling was almost in sync with the ocean. So it's, again, I think I responded in a sensory way. Again, when you're on a ship, you are embedded in the motion of the ship, in the smell of it, in the colors, the light. You're tuned in to the horizon, and I love that.
How do you know when it's done? I have asked you this question before, and I think we talked about Women in War.
I still keep hoping it's done.
But leaving that one aside, because we've well documented that one now. But these particular ones these are bodies of work where you've found closure. And when you're making projects, how do you know when you've made the frame? Is it a moment? I call it my Forrest Gump moment, where he says, one day I just start running. And he did. He stops, turns round and walks back home.
So in Tibet, both trips were so profound. The second trip, again, I took 100 rolls. I was there for a finite amount of time. And prior to the first trip, I had almost like this vision, which I had never had before, where I had this idea to sequence the images by color, by the colors of the Tibetan prayer flags.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea what I would be photographing, although it was weird because I was doing a lot of photographs in Tibet that almost felt cinematic and how they would be put together. So, and then the second trip, I was weeping quite badly at the airport the day I was leaving the second trip, which I'm not typically a crier. And because I knew, like, in my heart and soul, I would never go back there. And people ask me, do you want to go back? And it's like, those 2 trips were so extraordinary, so profound. And they were a time and a moment, but that they were finite. With the crossing, once I had a publisher, I have a Dutch publisher on that. And so once I had a publisher, I knew that probably after the 5th crossing, I felt like I was pretty close to being done. But I was writing a lot of text, poetic prose. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go back. And I wanted to do sort of another back-to-back crossing. And I thought, okay, this will be a good opportunity to just sequester myself and write the text. But of course, I took another 100 rolls of film with me. But the last trip was less about the photography because I had already done so much and I knew what I had taken. But it was interesting because on the first crossing, there was one morning when the sun was at a specific angle and it was windy. And so there were white caps and the wind was kind of blowing this spray, and the way the sun was hitting it, they were causing these like little flashing rainbows. And I kept trying to photograph it, but I was worried about rationing film and I didn't get any good shots, good enough. And so then literally the last crossing, Southampton, New York, Southampton. And so literally on the Southampton, New York leg, there was a much more sort of stormy day, but the sun was out, and it happened again. But by that time, I knew I had more knowledge with how to actually get the shot because of the first experience. But it's a much more interesting picture anyway, because just everything, the sky was blue on the first one, but this is more dramatic. But I got my rainbows, and I wrote text. And so in a way, it felt like a natural finale. And then we went into full production on it for the book, which happened to come out right before the pandemic.
I look at this project, and I will, of course, put pictures on the show page today. I'm hoping we'll be able to use that one of the rainbows at sea, and it must have been an incredible privilege to be able to go back and forth, making these voyages, taking these legs of a journey that once your parents had made. I wonder what it did for you.
I think certainly being on the ocean was incredibly, in a word, I hate to use it because it's a cliche almost, but it was, I think, really healing and cathartic from all of the women in war travel that I had been doing. It just I loved it. I mean, it was good for my soul.
My thanks to Marissa Roth, and also today to Giles Penfound, to Duncan Ferguson and Nathan Rhines. Oh my word, this path is ridiculous. I feel like I'm in that movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because honestly, vegetation should not be this high in the United Kingdom land. Look at that. Oh dear. For links to their work, Marissa and Giles and Duncan and Nathan, and those that have written in today, go to today's show page on the website, photowalk.show, episode number 380. Hold on, I need to flick off some bugs that seem to be all around my ear and over my head. Oh, Neil, I'm beginning to itch with you. Get through that bit, would you? I will. Oof. Has that thing bitten me? Oh, look. Stop it now. I've not seen a bug like that. It seems to be orange and green. Not supposed to have bugs like that in this country, are we? So, yes, go to photowalk.show. I'll get there, episode number 380, or follow the link in the podcast player app, which will also take you there. Our play-out song today is from Reed Pittman. It's called Wait on Me, which is not about the ocean, but there's a rhythmic sense about this song. I choose songs because, I like the fact that it's a very different end to a podcast. I don't think any other photography podcast, which doesn't make it right to do this, of course, ends in this fashion. So I quite like that. It's my little stamp. I love music. Music and photography, it all melds, it goes together. And that's the reason why I have it. And so it's not really about the ocean, but I kind of, as I chose this song today, I thought, I think I could listen to that on the deck as I'm making my pictures. So that's the reason why I've chosen that. But I'm not going to do a postscript. Usually we have a PS, some sort of pithy quote or something. Mainly because I think we're going to have so many next week. It will form very much the basis of next week's show. It'll be PS after PS after PS in some respects. Instead, and I promise you this, we're going to have the inside scoop on who could take the Eurovision crown this year. So let me bring back Nathan for a moment, our Eurovision photographer, just so that you get the reference on the score system. Remember again, 12 points as the top score for a song. That's what people want. That's what the acts want. And 0 points, no points, for the songs not appreciated. If you watch Eurovision, you'll understand why I ask Nathan this question.
Who are you going to give your 12 points to this year?
I think it might be Loreen.
Loreen, Sweden, who did well before.
I really like that. I really like that song. And to be fair, she has a good track record with Euphoria.
Yes.
So that will receive my 12 points.
0 points to the UK.
Won't make friends with that.
The seasons change, but I'm stuck in this pattern where every little thing matters too much. I can see the stains of all the careless words. I say them 'cause they hurt. Staring at a map where I can't read the legend. I question every method I have. So I'm looking back to how we got things started when I gave you my heart, yeah. Oh, I still know the way. Running late, I seem a little far away, but I'll get there someday. Wait on me, wait on me, wait on me. Wait on me, wait on me, wait on me. I need to reach out and stop our world from spinning, find a new beginning for us. Even when I'm in doubt, I've gotta trust my instincts. I know you're standing with me. Oh, I still know the way. Oh, this train is running late, but seem a little far away, but I'll get there someday. Wait on me, wait on me. The way. Oh, this train is running late, might seem a little far away, but I'll get there someday. I still know the way. Oh, this train is running late, seem a little far away, but I'll get there someday. Wait on me, wait on me, wait on me. Wait on me, wait on me, wait on me. Wait on me, wait on
me. Reed Pittman's Wait on Me. That's it for this week. My thanks to all our guests once more. The Extra Mile is out, and this week we're in Singapore, talking about everything from attaching a CCTV lens to your camera, yes, really, to street food and lots more besides. Next week, Kevin Kelly then. I suspect it's going to be a walk where we both say, oh, yes to that. Oh, yes, I've been thinking that myself, and that sort of stuff. The Africa 24 page is now up, so if you'd like to join us in West Africa, in the Gambia, next year, then do go and see that. Final virtual fist bumps go to Neil Ford, head of stuff that only works after he's given it a reboot, Emily Rainier for your eyes in our Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin, Chief of Staff, on the Instagram and Ideas floor. To Artlist also for the music, and I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.